I spoke last week at some length about the existential, and I managed to cover a whole lot of ground so well that I didn't feel any need to write an essay about it. I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot by bringing this up, but throughout Man Alive, I talk about an idea that I call the subjunctive. Subjunctive is a term from grammar, and grammar is very much a lost art in America. No one teaches grammar at all. And I'm sure it's worse now than when I was in school, but it was terrible when I was in school. I learned grammar when I learned Latin. I've written all my life. I've written well all my life. But I didn't really understand grammar until I learned Latin. And obviously, I've been invoking the subjunctive all my life. Everybody does. Wait till Grandma gets here. Where were you last week? Once more into the breach. I love that one from Shakespeare. These are all subjunctive statements. They all describe worlds not in evidence. That's what subjunctive means. It describes worlds not in evidence. And so theoretical worlds, hypothetical worlds, remembered worlds, anticipated worlds, these are all things that we can induce in our mind. And we're the only people the only organisms that can do this. Animals can't do this. There is a certain amount of subjectivity in animals. If you watch for it, for instance, dogs can dream. Dogs will dream about running and food. And if you watch them while they sleep, sometimes you'll see them chasing a rabbit and eating it. And so I know that dogs can dream. I mean, I can't experience it. I can't monitor it. I suppose you could do PET scans or something like that on a dog. This is somebody's PhD. I just wrote somebody's PhD brief to do PET scans on dogs to see what their brains are doing when they're dreaming. Dogs are my laboratory of mental functioning, of brain functioning, because I have dogs and they're constantly teaching me things. Dogs can try to influence your behavior. Dogs believe in free will. You can't go into a philosophy department in the United States and find anyone who believes in free will, but dogs believe in free will. And how do you know for sure that dogs believe in free will? Because they try to influence your behavior. They try to guide you where they want you to go. If they want to go outdoors, they'll come and get you and they'll push you toward the door. If they want to get fed, you're not going anywhere else. They're going to push you toward the magic food source, whatever it is, wherever it is that you hide the dog food to keep the dogs out of it. They're going to push you over there again and again and again and again until you come back with food. And that is subjectivity. That is invoking a world not in evidence. If I say, to my wife, my lovely wife, Kathleen Collins, if I say, honey, will you please bring me a Pepsi? I'm invoking a world not in evidence. I'm imagining a world where I have a Pepsi in my hand, even though existentially I don't have a Pepsi in my hand. And so it's useful to say that there's a bright line distinction between the real and the imaginary. Real things really exist. You can pick them up, you can touch them, you can taste them. I do this all the time. There's nothing that I can see that I could actually pick up in my hands that I won't press to my forehead to take its temperature and then lick. And I have licked a whole lot of stuff, things that you would never, ever, ever put on your tongue. But that's a real thing. A real thing is something you can sense with your sense organs. And obviously, imaginary things don't have any of those characteristics. They don't have any weight, they don't have any mass, they don't have any texture, they don't have any smell, they don't have any temperature, they can't be tasted, they don't exist. Imaginary things don't exist. The existential is reality while it's happening. And so a real thing exists whether I'm aware of it or not, but what's happening existentially from the point of view of my own mind is what's going on around me. And the subjunctive invokes worlds that could be and might be in evidence, have been in evidence, but are not currently in evidence. In other words, the subjunctive, the imaginary is distinguished from the real, and the subjunctive is distinguished from the existential. And the reason that it's useful to think about subjunctive ideas, I mean, there are a lot of good reasons for thinking about them, but obviously to consider the consequences of bad behavior requires the invocation of worlds not in evidence, that don't drive like that, you'll get in an accident and kill yourself. Well, no. Existentially, there has been no accident. There's no blood. No car has been crushed. There are no police cars or fire engines around. None of that has happened. Existentially, it did not happen, and yet we invoke this subjunctive idea of an accident, and we moderate our behavior in consequence because we know that existentially an accident could happen, and could is the way that you invoke the subjunctive. If is the way you invoke the subjunctive. When is the way you invoke the subjunctive. And it's useful. It's very useful for human beings to think this way. I mentioned in the book that dogs will eat anything. Dogs will eat poison because dogs are idiots. And they can't learn anything. They can't learn in any comprehensive way, and so they'll always eat poison. And they're built their nature, their genetic nature is such that they're built to regurgitate bad food. Dogs are built with a horizontal digestive system, mostly. Big dogs often aren't. They're kind of semi-vertical like a horse. But dogs are built in such a way that they can eat the worst crap in the world, and anything that isn't food, they just regurgitate. And then often they'll eat it again. Which, if they had any ability to invoke the subjunctive in their own mind, any way to do that in any kind of organized fashion, they certainly would not eat the stuff that they just puked up, but they will. It's the way they're made. It's the way they're built. And again, whenever you hear a dancing bear theory, I want you to stop and think that a dog will eat its own vomit. That a dog will vomit something because it's bad. It doesn't know that it's bad, but its body knows that it's bad. It doesn't know. Its body is rejecting it as bad food, and yet the dog will then try to re-ingest that same bad food. This is a bright line distinction between humans and animals, and anytime any dipshit academic tries to tell you that animals are just like us or that we are just like animals, I want you to remember the dog will eat its own vomit. And that's all you need to know to sustain that distinction in your mind. That's all you need to know to remember it.